Hey, how you doing? We were conceived in 4 rooms the Salvation Army owned. We grew too big and we had to find a new home. It's been a long journey to where we are today. It's been a long, wonder-filled journey to where we are. Oh, I guess I got confused. This is not South by Southwest MUSIC. This is the EUD one, right? So my name's Asenath Andrews. He's already said all my stuff, so I guess I'll just take questions. But I'll try to add a little to what he had to say. We are a school for pregnant parenting teens in Detroit. We have a small group. About 10% of the girls at our school are also what we call the aunties. They are not pregnant nor parenting, but wanted to be in an all-girls school. We'll talk about why that happened a little later. When I first got a call, there was a little program in the Salvation Army building that had about 40 girls, 20 girls who lived in and another 20 who were day students. And they had just been kind of lost, and DPS, Detroit Public Schools, reorganized, and the woman who took over the school found out that there was this little program assigned to special ed because all the girls at that time had to be identified as physically or otherwise handicapped impaired so that they could get teachers. So somebody cut a deal with the Salvation Army and Detroit Public Schools to be able to get teachers for these girls. Actually, the reason I came to the school was because it was, someone called me and asked me to go over and take a look. There were no kids there, but it was this beautiful building, and they had these really nice stained glass windows. So I thought, well, this can't be a bad place to work, stained glass windows. And so the stained glass windows were in the chapel, and we proceeded to make that into our auditorium and dance studio. Now, I grew up pretty strict Baptist. We didn't dance at all, let alone dancing in the church. But we didn't get struck by lightning, and so we just kept on. At that time, I had 4 teachers and me. We didn't have any child care. We hadn't even thought about that. But one of the things we did do is, at the time, Coleman Young was the mayor, and he had this program called Farm-A-Lot. So this was about 1987, 86. And so we planted a garden. I think that anybody who's going to be somebody's mother needs to be able to feed their children, so we planted a garden. But if you know, at that time, everybody who went to the school, you had to leave after you had your baby. So we had this garden, and these pregnant girls are like down, and they would just like tip over. So we had to figure out how to do a better job of that. So we did these things called raised beds. So the feeling at the Salvation Army is that you can't, girls don't build things. Well, I used to be an art teacher, so I know that girls build things, because in my old school, we built go-karts, and I had this great principal, and he let us have races in the hall. So can you imagine how wonderful it is to have a go-kart running down the center of a school hall that's like a block long? So we built these raised beds, and we started to get more and more students because we started letting kids stay a little longer. First, you had to leave after your 2-week checkup. Then we pushed it to the 6-week checkup. Then we pushed it to the end of the semester. Then we pushed it to a year. And because it just made sense to not ask kids to go from being a regular kid to a pregnant teenager, to telling people you were pregnant, to changing schools, to having your baby, to being a parent, changing schools again. That's just too much change for anybody to do well. So we started extending it. But the Salvation Army made me sign a contract saying that I would only take 125 girls. I'm a school teacher. How do you tell girls they can't come to school? So I devised what I thought was just this very clever plan. And I was like, I'd be Susie on Monday and Wednesday, and somebody else would be Susie on Tuesdays and Thursday, which probably would have worked if I hadn't been trying to fool this woman who is probably 92 now. And if you called her right this minute and said, I think I was born at the Salvation Army in 1940, she'll go, yes, and your mother's name was Gloria, and you weighed 4 pounds. So I'm trying to trick this lady into thinking Susie is a different person every day. Well, so then the Salvation Army, they're wonderful. They pick people up off the street. They feed homeless people. They put us out. So we had to find a new place. I've said this already once, and now it's on the internet, so I guess I might as well let people know. I was out walking with some girls one day. We were just out walking for exercise, and we got lost. And we found this building, and it was just this beautiful building. It had these puabic tiles on the outside, and there was a window just open about this much. So we had one girl who wasn't real pregnant, and we put her through the window. And so it's like all of us like lifting this kid up, putting her through the window, and she went and opened the door to this closed school. Well, I didn't know that schools had alarms. No one ever told me. So we're running through the school, and this school's alarms were sound activated. So you know when you get a new house and you go, oh, that's gonna be my room. So the kids go, Miss Andrews, you have an office, and we could, so we just screaming running through the hall until the police came. And then, so then I've got like these 75, 80 girls, all pregnant, and me. And so the police have got me handcuffed, and now the girls are all crying. And so then the police finally realized that everybody's pregnant but me. And so they let us go, and they said, you know, it's against the law to break into schools. And I was like, oh, really? We didn't know that. So they told us how to get back home, and we figured out how to get back to the school. So then it was a process of being able to get the school system to let us move to this building. You know, a lot of it's funny, but it's also sad. They moved us in with the bad boys and the expelled kids, because getting pregnant is just about like robbing a liquor store. And it is where pregnant and parenting teens are kind of notched into that illegal, bad behavior, bad actor kind of slot. And so we've worked really hard over the years to try and get our kids past that. So we moved into the new building, and we took our garden with us. And after a couple of years, there was another school that closed, and we inherited their staff whole. And wasn't a bad thing, because it was a staff that had had a school on the campus at Wayne State University. One of the courses that they had was you had to take a living history of Detroit class, and they would give you a list of 50 sites, places, events, and people, and then you did independent field trips on your own, and you had to write reviews of it or do a catalog for your credit. So we started kind of on this journey of kids learning by doing things differently quite a while ago. So, but along with this staff, we also got this science teacher who was a little different. He came in, and his name was Mr. Wirtz. And so CFA, we had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on this farm, we had some beans, E-I-E-I-O. But Mr. Wirtz, he found a rabbit, E-I-E-I-O. And the rabbit had a chick, and the chick had a goat, and the goat had a duck, and the duck had a horse, and the horse had a cow, and the cow had a pig. Oh my. So we went from just having a garden to having a farm. I mean, that's really what happened. I am famously, I don't like animals. So it was having all these animals on the playground kind of freaked me out. I mean, I just don't like them. I don't like goldfish. I don't like anything that's not going to grow up, get a job, and move. So it was really kind of a shock to me that Paul had these 2 rabbits, and the next thing I know, we had some chickens, and then we had some goats, and then we had a cow. And what was even more amazing about it is that the girls loved it. So they would come in every morning. You know, you had those little cutie cute girls. Ooh. So we wear black and white every day, and they would bring different clothes, different boots, so they could go out and milk the goats. I came to school one morning, and the horse had run away, and one of the girls said, Miss Andrews, you gotta go find the horse. I'm like, baby, I'm not going to find you if you go too far, but I went looking for the horse. And so now I'm driving down the street holding a horse thing out the window of my car. But it was an opportunity for city girls to learn some things about animals that they would never have learned before. Then we got the reputation of anything that got killed, people would bring it to us. So we would, instead of having dissections, we would have autopsies. And we would do it in the courtyard, and we had these camera microscope things. So the science classes would cut open these animals and weigh the heart, and it was like a CSI for deer and cats and all kinds of animals. So we have done some pretty amazing things at our school, and now people think of it as innovative or special, and at the time it just seemed like reasonable things to do. So the other good thing is Mr. Wirtz, the science teacher who has this amazing kind of evolutionary animal thing going on, he was also a carpenter, sort of, and a plumber, sort of. He knew how to do a lot of stuff. So I was in DC with some kids one year at Youth in Government, and some people I know were rehabbing a daycare center, and I called my boss and said, ooh, I really think my girls could do this. But they're never gonna let us do this because, I mean, they're never gonna let us bring kids and babies and tools and work in DC, rehabbing a daycare center. And she said, you know, there can't be a rule against something nobody's ever done before. And that's the kind of person I work for. And she's also the one that called me and said, hey, there's this little building over here with some pregnant girls in it. She is the reason we were able to do so many things. I heard someone's talk this morning about teachers and schools acting as if there are these rules, but there really are. Sometimes there really aren't those rules. We impose those rules on ourselves because it just seems like they're never gonna let us do that, because they're never gonna let us do that. And so if you do it, you go, oh, I guess they will let us do it. Because my mother says all the time, don't you tell yourself no, let them tell you no. So we went about doing that. We then started doing what we called away summer school, and that was, we had 2 tracks for summer school. Part of the students went to a college campus for summer school, and the other part went tent camping. The assistant principal was a science teacher, and she and the dance teacher, science teacher, camp lady, they would take the kids tent camping, and I would take the kids to a college campus, and it was kids got to choose which one they wanted. I'm first generation college, and my parents did a great job. I got a good basic high school education. I went to Mumford High School. I think there are 2 people here who went to Mumford. But I was still first generation college, and there were some things that my parents just couldn't tell me about college. And a lot of times kids who have no family history of going to college think they can't go because they think everybody there is super smart or super rich or super something. And so you only have to be on a college campus, 10 minutes till you find somebody who's dumb as a brick and poor as a church mouse. So you figure, okay, then I can do this, because now we've demystified that whole college thing. The tent camping, well, I like room service, so I didn't go on those at all. I've done tent camping, but not with kids or babies, which really gets tricky. So we take babies every place we go. So we did a lot about getting kids out of that school and out of that building, because I think you cannot learn everything you need to learn in a school building. Another teacher suggested, we had a really long strike one year, and one of the teachers suggested that we try to figure out what we're gonna do, because we're gonna stay in school till July. And so we decided to go to California. So we got buses and we shipped the nursery equipment out to California, and we took 8 days to drive out and saw the country as we went. What possessed us to think we could cook meals for 140 people in those little motel kitchens, but we did for 8 days. And then we built houses with Habitat for Humanity during the day and had classes at night, because you got to get kids out of there. Now, we did a lot of travel, but we also did, I think, some kind of interesting things with some of the courses. Like in Detroit, you had to take, in 10th grade, you take US history, and then you take your English class, literature is American Lit. Well, why would you teach those separately? Why would you not have those joined together as one class? So we started calling that the American Experience. or government and econ. How can you have a government without some economics, and how can you have economics without some governance? So we combined those classes. We started naming classes in ways that we thought kids would appeal to them more. One of the things that distresses me about education in general is that we don't do a very good job of marketing what we do. At the end of the period, it's like, do your homework. Yeah. So we say at the end of the period, do your homework, and tomorrow we're going to read the Peloponnesian War. See ya. And we just can't figure out why kids are, Peloponnesian War, can't wait to get back tomorrow. I mean, everything they do and everything they love is marketed to them except education. So we started those classes that we thought were going to be really difficult, we started marketing them maybe in a little different way. Like we wanted to introduce a physics class and anatomy and physiology. So we started putting signs up saying, these science classes are only for the smart girls. Only smart girls, please register for this class. If you're a dummy, please don't sign up. And we got more kids than we could ever, we had to open another section for the anatomy and physiology because kids who they might have been kind of dumb, but they didn't believe it. And kids do what you expect them to do. That teacher expectation thing that was done 100 years ago, I so completely believe that it's true. In all of the trips I've ever taken kids on, I've never had a kid come late. I've had teachers come late, and there's a famous story that goes around the school where the teachers are chasing the bus because I left them. You know, I tell the kids when the big hand gets on the 12 and the little hand gets on the 2, we're out. If you don't have a ride, and the teachers were late. So I had to leave. If I was going to leave the kids, you know I had to leave the teachers. So we've had a lot of success, but we've had some challenges. Let me just list some of the challenges that we've had. We tried something called pickup classes because kids would come and enroll at any time, and we were trying to just pick them up wherever they were, and they would come in once a week and pick up work, and we would try to do this till the new quarter started. That, if you were thinking of that, let it go, doesn't work. We also tried a few other things that didn't work, like we used to have moms pick their babies up at lunchtime. Moms like seeing their babies, but they weren't really spending time with their babies. They were spending time with their friends, and they need time to just be girls. So babies were privy to conversation that they probably wouldn't have if we hadn't picked them up at lunchtime. We hired Miss McGillicuddy. Bad idea. Don't hire her. She was not there for our kids. I sent kids home once in the summer school. We were away, and we did summer school in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So here's Detroit. Here's Marquette. That's where we would go for summer school. And we got all these kids suddenly had chicken pox, and so we had to send them home and pay for the bus, and then the people on the bus didn't want to be there with chicken pox. Well, once you break out, it's too late to send you home. So if you get chicken pox, don't worry about it, it's too late. You can't send them home, there's no point, they've already infected everybody. We offered French instead of Spanish. Duh. We're 4 blocks from a Hispanic neighborhood. Why? But we got this French teacher, that's really why we did it, but it was a mistake. You can work people to a point, and this is, I guess, to the administrators, that you can really work your staff to a point of diminishing returns. I always feel like if they're paying us to be there, we got to work every minute right up to the very bell. And at a point, you just need people to be able to not be working formally, but talking about what they've been learning so far. And so that was another lesson that I learned. Give them time to think about what you're teaching them. And another one, I was walking a consultant through the school, just showing her around, and I walked into the English teacher's class, and she's a very mild-mannered, easygoing person, and I was going, hey, Deborah, how's it going? And she just went, I'm just overwhelmed to see this, I'm just overwhelmed. I was like, whoa, and in front of the consultant, you thought this was the time to share. And, but what that taught me is you cannot keep putting things on people's plates and not taking something off. But we've had some things to celebrate beyond those. I, for the longest, thought that when you go to heaven and you have Judgment Day, that you're going to have everybody in the room hearing all the things you did. And I have 2 things that I truly believe that I'm going to have to face God. But now I've heard from this other preacher, that judgment is in private. So it's just you and God, and he's going, okay, remember that kid, China? Remember you didn't give her what she needed? And I do think we didn't. At the time, we didn't have any special needs teachers, and I never heard differentiated instruction. I didn't know, and we didn't know how to give her what she needed. So I think I'm gonna have to face God and tell him why I didn't give China what she needed. And we also, one time, changed the requirement for our students because it was hard on the teachers. For summer school, we're only there for 3 weeks, and we work a 17-hour day every day, but our requirement was that you had to read a novel a week. And we moved it from 3 novels to 2 novels because we were having to beat the kids with big sticks to make them read it. And the teachers were complaining, and so I agreed to lower the standard. And my rule has always been that if I want it for my kid, I want it for these, or if I wouldn't want it for mine, I don't want it for these. These are not other people's children, these are my children. And that was a decision that was made for the benefit of grown-ups, not for kids. And schools are for kids. My first principal, that was we had one rule in the school, is we must respect ourselves and each other, and the abiding attitude for everything that went on in the school was schools are for kids. So I feel badly about it, and it's been probably 10 years ago, and I still feel badly, so don't do it. It makes you feel bad forever if you make decisions that are best for you or some grown-ups and not in the best interest of kids. We have thank you. We've been really successful getting kids to college, but that's another one of those situations where you have to learn to work to people's strengths. And the woman who did our college admission stuff was just Gestapo. I mean, you know, it's like you could come to her and go, oh, my eye is falling out. And she was going, just dictate the essay to me then, and I'll type it for you. I mean, it was just, she was relentless. But who gets into college without somebody behind you? If your parents hadn't been there for you, or your older sister or older brother, whoever did it for you, well, Barbara did it for us and did it for my girls. It's like, I just came from the hospital, my baby was in the hospital all night, I know, but the essay is due day after tomorrow and I need a rough draft in an hour. I mean, she was just, but she was not an advisory teacher. She was not a bunch of things, but she was good at that. And so I kept trying to make her be something else instead of doing what she does well. And for the longest, we were trying to make the kids fit the school instead of trying to make the school fit the kids. So the two of those kind of worked out. We changed the time school started to make it work better for kids. We've changed the way we delivered instruction to make it better for kids. We've done some teaming. We've done some things that have worked really well. We've done some things not so well. But we've had a lot of kids succeed. So we've got cashiers and nurses and telephone operators and cable installers. And we have one girl who owns a water heater company, which she learned to do at our school, install water heaters. We have nail salon owners and beauty shop owners and pharmacy techs. And for you job snobs, we have psychiatrists and nurses and architects and social workers and psychologists and authors and models. Our kids have done well because we really cared about them. They were our kids. We've also had very good birth outcomes. In the 27 years, we have only had 4 low birth weight babies born, which is pretty extraordinary because that is generally the problem with the children of teen mothers. They're low birth weight, and that leads to central nervous system issues. If there's some health people and you want to talk about it later, we can. But we also have a nurse on staff, and we expect everybody to get prenatal care. So where do we want to go? Greg said something about the laundromat, and when I first got out of college, I didn't have a washer and dryer at my house. So I was washing. I could go to my parents' house to wash, but you know, you go to your parents' house and you got to have dinner with your parents and all that other stuff. So I started washing clothes by hand, and a friend came over one morning, and I said, oh, I'm so glad you're here. You can help me wring out these sheets. And she's like, what? Wring out some sheets? What the hell? So I said, well, you know, I got to wash these clothes, and I'm going to wash these sheets, and if you're here, you can hold one, and we can twist it and wring it out. And she was going to sing it. Have you heard these places that got these big old buildings with a lot of washing machines in them, and you put a quarter in the thing, and I was just taken away. I was like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? I mean, I'm washing blue jeans, trying to wring them out. I mean, everything. I didn't want to go to my parents' house, stay all day, have dinner. So I was doing it at home. And that's just how I felt when I figured out I've been taking my kids all over the country, but I never took them out of the country. And we did this techie thing. I really am a Luddite. I mean, I didn't know this kind of thing was going to be on the internet. One of my kids said, Ms. Andrews, I was watching the speech you gave. It's like, really, where? She said, on the computer. It's like, oh. So I'm a little more careful about what I say. But so, you know, we did this video conference with these students in Ethiopia, and we talked to them about urban gardening, and it just opened my eyes to the possibility. Now my students are experts because they know about urban gardening, and they were teaching it to people on the computer or on this video thing, and now we decided we were going to go to South Africa. And from there, so we've been to South Africa twice. We've also taken students to Ethiopia. The girls who just came back from Ethiopia were working with midwives in rural areas, and they were teaching them how to build solar helmets and birthing kits. So it was just a natural fit for us to do that. We are now a charter. We moved from a Detroit public school to a public charter, and we work in the district called Blanche Kelso Bruce Academy, and Blair Evans, who is the superintendent of that district, I get credit for being visionary, but it really just makes sense to do. He really is a visionary in some ways. So he said to me, Asenath, do you think your girls would like to plan an intentional community? I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, intentional community? What? I didn't know what an intentional community was, but my girls would do anything. I mean, we could do anything. You know, I really believe you don't need shoes, you need wings. So I figured out what an intentional community was on top of the 29 books Mr. Evans gave me to read about it, because I think he kind of knew I was going, sure, that sounds like fun. So last summer, I paid 10 girls to just think about intentional communities and explore it. And I have gotten some people thinking, why are you paying kids to think? We pay grown-ups to think all the time, but we don't really respect that kids can think through some problems. And I asked teachers to give me kids who could think and rethink. I didn't want just those smart kids. I didn't want the kids who do what you ask them to do. I wanted kids who would challenge some ideas and think about how we would build this community and what would it look like. So we are now on an 18-month schedule that starting in March, oh no, this is March, so it not start in March, I guess it's April, we actually start to build these portable small and tiny houses, and we're planting indicator crops so that we know that this land will be okay for growing, and it'll be a net zero house. If you're really interested in some of this, there's something called Living Building Challenge that will give you some idea of what this intentional community is like. We've also embarked on a new learning model called Big Picture. So we're a big picture inspired school where kids learn by doing, and they start with their passion, and then you move out from there. What am I like? What's the time like here? They made me leave my phone and I practice. I got time? Okay, so let me tell you just a little bit about this big picture thing. So if a kid wants to be an undertaker, and she needs to take world history. So instead of her just going through world history the regular way, world history for us at least, starts at Mesopotamia and ends at the Roman Empire. I think it's Roman Empire. So she looks at world history through the burial practices and funeral things and the way, because that's what she's interested in. So she starts world history from where she's interested in. She wants to bury people now. How did they bury them in Mesopotamia? And how was that affected by the politics of the time? And what was going on during that time that made people bury people, maybe some people burn people? So that would be how she would approach it. And that's how Big Picture's supposed to work. We had this kind of a rocky road, but we're getting there. It's some of the rigor we want for building. You really got to know how to get kids to engage and work in that. But that's one of the exciting things that we're trying. And I think we're really gonna help kids to learn to be owners of their own learning and start to do it in a way that makes more sense for us. When we came back from Africa the first time, one of my girls said that What was most important about her having gone on this trip was that her son, until she had gone on this trip, her son was always going to be a boy on the block. And since she's come back from this trip, her son will now always be a man of the world. If there was no other reason to have done this, that would have been enough. And it is important to me that what we do is that we make decisions for our kids at our schools like we make decisions for our kids in our lives. Because we can sometimes get confused about making decisions about other people's children, as if they are different from our children, as if we don't want the same for them. I heard this morning somebody say that there's some people who aren't college material. But you know, it's always funny how the people who aren't college material aren't the ones who live in your house. It's those other people's children that aren't college material. So let college be the default. And then if you want to be a plumber later, that's fine. But now you can keep your own books because you got a 2-year degree in business. So I want to make sure that my girls are always women of the world and their children can be children of the universe. Thank you. Wow. Thanks. Thank you, thank you. Boy, I need to take a picture of you. I was at a meeting last week and the guy said, don't let other people force you into standing or standing ovation. If you don't want to stand, don't stand. I saw you didn't stand. I'm calling your mother. So, but now really I can take some questions if you have some. I'm sorry, baby. So you get to be old, you can start acting like you had a stroke or something, and you can say what you want. Any questions? See, I can't really see you, so I don't know.
I'm curious about the last thing you spoke about, and a learner helping them shape how they learn by what they're interested in. But I'm really wondering, how do you help them know what they're interested in as a young person?
That's a good question. And that has really presented some challenges. We've been doing a series of conversations with this guy. His name is Frishoff Bergman, who is a philosopher. And he talks about new work, new economy, and what you really, really want to do. And that first group of kids that I had in last summer, the question he asked is, what do you want for your children? And out of the 10 girls that were working as the summer thinkers, only one of them said, I want her to be happy. So what we start with is, what makes you happy? Because you may not know what you want to be. And what we think we know from the Department of Labor is that this generation is going to have a whole bunch of jobs. There won't be any Asenath Andrews standing talking in front of people saying, I was here for 27 years. There will be a whole bunch of different things. So you don't have to know for sure what you think you might like, and we'll try that for a while. And when we used to do internships before, we had a girl, I want to be a nurse anesthetist. I want to be a nurse anesthetist. I was like, cool, I don't even know how to spell it, but we'll try and figure that out. And Barbara, the one who did the college, also did our internships. So this kid, the only reason she wanted to be a nurse anesthetist because she heard they made $90,000 a year. So she gets to the hospital, they give her a uniform, she scrubs into surgery, first cut, bam. Well, now she's a nurse, but she is not working in the OR. You know, so one of the things about this, though, is that even if that's not what you want, you get to do a bunch of different internships, depending on what grade you're in. You do another one every quarter, or you can keep it for a long time. If you don't like it, you try something else next time till you figure out what you like. But how many of us do what we do because it's what we really, really want to do? Did anybody ask you, what do you really, really want to do? I really, really want to stay home and read. Or I really, really want somebody to pay me to think. I want to work for a think tank. Anybody out there? I want to work for a think tank. So, but do I really want to do that? I only want to work at a think tank. There's going to be other funny people to work there too. And I'm thinking thinkers may not be so much fun. But that's how. That's how. You just give them an opportunity, and you know, really, if we were going to roll this out again, I'd say we take them to a bunch of places, see a lot of people doing a lot of things. ideally, I was at some meeting and they said, dream big, dream wild. And so I would say, if I could dream big, dream wild, I'd take every kid in the school on a 2-month road trip and just stop and see people doing stuff. Everybody we saw on the street doing something was like, hey, what do you do? How'd you learn how to hold that flag while we were standing here in the hot sun, not moving? So, oh, we're at the emergency room, hey, how'd you get to be a nurse? I mean, you know, just that kind of really real world, let's try it out. But unless somebody is gonna let us do that, and it's probably not gonna happen too soon, but no, this might happen, just not too soon. You just gotta give them a chance to try. Been doing some reading about spark too, which really scares me, because once you get that spark, you know, it's like a lot of things that once you're there, you can't be deterred. Women who are in bad relationships, there's nothing you can say to get them to leave until they're ready to leave. And once they're ready to leave, there's nothing you can say that could keep them there. And once you get kids with a spark, spark is even better for me than passion. I'm so tired of hearing passion. I sit at these meetings now and I write all these little words that people, I'm gonna unpack this and I'm gonna like scaffold that. So now passion, everybody got a passion. But spark is a little different because it's not so specific. It just ignites ideas, and that's what I'd like for us to be. I'd like for us to be an innovation incubator, but we'll see. Was that a long answer to a one little question? I'm sorry, I'll try and be shorter.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you very much for your time today. You mentioned before that you do what works for students. How do you know that it's working for students? I know a lot of times you do something, you think it works, you do it again, it falls flat. And sometimes some students are engaged and other students are not. So how do you know what works and what you take to move forward?
Don't I look smart? No. You don't know. You don't know until you try it. And fortunately, I was in a situation where nobody was going to get me if it didn't work. So if it worked for enough kids, we'd keep it for those kids. And if it didn't work for those other kids, we'd try and find something else that did work for them. But we tried a lot of things. I told you we hired Ms. McGillicuddy. Bad idea. And she was a social worker. Ooh, really bad idea. But you don't know till you try it. And it is really, I heard in I've been in a lot of meetings lately, so I heard this person say that the fear of failure will kill innovation, and I just haven't had to live with that. My best friend, who's also my attorney, has said, read the headline before you make these decisions, because he thinks I'm a little too experimental. But so the headline, we were rehabbing this house down the street from the school, and I drive a F-150 pickup. I'm from Detroit. We drive American. So I had all these kids in the back of the truck, taking them down to this house, and I thought, headline, principal kills 17 girls, truck accident, stupid. So then I said, well, we gotta walk. You know, you can't get in the back of the truck, or you have to lay down, which, you know, which would have been better. Principal crushes laying down 17 kids. But you have to be willing to try, because what we're doing now is not working that great. So, you know, people think, oh, you took such risk. The only really risky thing that I've ever done in hindsight that I thought was risky is when we built a barn. And I looked out my window and I saw this 8-month pregnant girl standing on the roof of a 3-story barn putting shingles on. And I was like, that's risky. But short of, and then what do? You run out, get down. No, now she's falling. So you just want a baby come down off the roof. This is not your job. Yours is to hand the bucket up, you know. But I just don't, there are no silver bullets. There are no things that work for everybody. That's why this big picture thing really appeals to me, because it's one kid at a time. So you're not trying to make it fit for everybody. But even that is not for every kid. Some kids need a little more structure than that. And so as we get farther into it, we will try to make sure that it works for each kid the best we can. Everybody in the room, one teacher going up, you know, we know that's not working. Tell me something you learned in high school. how to sneak out at lunchtime and smoke. So, you know, there's some things that we just want to do better. You win some, you lose some, as long as they don't hurt kids in the process.
Hi, you talked about wanting to take students just on the road for 2 months. Have you done anything like bringing people from different fields, and has mentorship played a key role at all, just exposing students?
Part of the big picture plan is that you do an internship 2 days a week, and that person that you do that internship with is your mentor. We've also had a lot of people in the school. Every time I do a talk or somebody's on television, we get all these people, I was a teen mother, let me come and talk to your girls. And you know, they're 107, and 30-year-olds are old for girls. But you get kids to connect with people. If I want to be a chef and I'm working for a chef, that's such a natural connection that, and we've had just straight mentor programs in the past where kids are still in touch with those mentors. So if you know, we know the whole issue of personalization in relationships, and if the relationship is there, that is the ideal. That's what you hope. Even if I don't want to be a doctor, I now have a relationship because I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and I had this mentor who was a doctor or in medical school, and now that I have one more person in my support network. So yes, that's the whole point, is to get kids one-on-one connected with mentors in the real world doing real work.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Jovian, and I've really enjoyed your remarks, so thank you.
Thank you. I'll tell my mother.
Yes, she will still be proud. So
thank God she lived long enough, you know?
Yes, I'm grateful for you.
Yes.
So one of the things you mentioned, and I tweeted it out, and a lot of people have retweeted it because it's so true, but you can't put additional things on people's plates without taking something off, right? And I don't think that's actually the case in a lot of industries, but it is tough in education for teachers. And so I'm wondering, what do you do to keep your staff happy, sustained, and engaged?
Nothing. I give them a check. No. I'm sorry. You know, one of the kids really give me a hard time about being a smart mouth, and I've been looking for a 12-step program for a smart mouth. Can't find one. But I think you have to do a lot of things. And there's this book that if you don't feed the teachers, they eat the kids. And so I try to remember little things. So you might come in, like I love Mondays are my favorite day of the week. They are not my staff's favorite day of the week. So now I do treats for Mondays. So I'll put something in the box, or I'll send a funny email, or I used to be able to, and now we're in a new environment, so I haven't quite learned this new charter thing as much as I knew DPS, but I would just say, okay, I'll have all the kids all morning come in at 12. And so I'd have all these things planned for the kids. Because my first principal, when I worked over, he would just say, take a day. I couldn't believe it. So time is probably the best thing. It's my job to get what you need to do what you need to do. So nobody in my school has to do discipline. Nobody has to try and raise money for band uniforms. We don't have a band, but if we had one, we'd find our own money. If you need some materials or you need some supplies, I need to know why, and I need to know numbers. Because I had a teacher last year who had only 4 kids, and she wanted to order 10 sets of stuff. It was like, you know. So I spend school money like I would spend my own money, and that means I don't waste it. But I try to do things to help people know that I appreciate what they're doing. I think one of the reasons, I heard somewhere once that you don't burn out from working hard, you burn out from working hard and not accomplishing anything and not being appreciated. And so sometimes I'll just tell every kid in the school, write a note to one of your teachers. Because, you know, my staff buys me stuff, but they don't buy me anything I couldn't buy myself. What I really appreciate is the notes they put in the card that they give with the gift. So that, and every now and then, if I'm really feeling flush, before I had such a big staff, I would just say, give everybody $10 and say, have some ice cream on me. Just little things to say, you know, I see you working hard. It's hard to keep up with, though. And I've been reminded twice. I've got all new people since we transitioned to the charter world, and I have to be reminded that the staff is my class, not the kids. It's so much easier to get the kids to pay off so much quicker. You know, they're like, oh, Miss Andrews, we love you. Grown-ups don't say they love you much, but you got to keep doing it anyway. So it's just the same things you would do for your students, you have to do for your teachers. And you really have to figure out a way to get stuff done without adding and adding and adding. And you usually add to the ones who are already working the hardest anyway. So then you get Deborah screaming at you in front of a consultant from out of town. It's like, and we had that conversation. But because kids would come in, I'd go, would you please catch her up? Would you give her some extra work? Would you stay after school? I was asking her to do what I'd want to be done. But I just kept adding things. Could you do the newspaper? Oh, Deborah, you know you're the English teacher, and you know how you kind of scam people. You're so good at it, you know. So that's how. Varying degrees of success depending on what the people are like. Some people don't care about that. Like, give me more money. Can't do that.
Hi, I'm Silas.
How you doing,
Silas? That was a
Silas?
great talk.
Thank you.
Miss Andrews, really articulate. As an academic, I'm a teacher.
Okay.
As an academic, I kind of, at times will use polysyllabic words. You know, I'll use big words.
I get it. I know what
polysyllabic
polysyllabic is.
With your, with your smart mouth, that you just have this great way of connecting with people using a range of...
Did you just call me a smart mouth? Boy, I'm going to whoop you. No, go ahead.
In both senses of the word.
Go ahead.
Or the
Good
term.
comeback.
So how do you figure that out? Is it just innate, or is it practice, or could you speak to that perhaps?
You know, as funny as that is, I think you have to be really, really careful about things like that. You, one, have to have a relationship with kids to be able to be a smart mouth with them. And it's not for everyone. You know, some people can do that and some people can't. And I think one of the things I see from younger teachers is that something that works for one teacher, they think will work for them, and it doesn't. We had a really bad incident once where a teacher was trying to make a point about vocabulary and wrote some really unfortunate stuff. See me after, I'll tell you, but I would never say it on the worldwide, whatever the thing is. So, because I could have written it, but he couldn't, because it just, I mean, I had a parent in my office, she was calling Congress and, you know, just everybody, and had it been my kid in this person's class, I'd have done the same thing. His intent was good, I got it, but you can't do that. You know, it's just some things, like I can call my brother a sloth, but you better not call him a sloth. So some of that is knowing what the relationship will tolerate. And still, I've had kids come in and say, I'm a pretty hefty person. And I have, you know, these little girls who wear a size 1, and when they get pregnant, so then they just look like, they really look like they swallowed a watermelon, just, you know, but nothing else. It's just all baby, just this one lump in the middle of them. And I was really teasing this one little girl who wears a 0. So she had her baby. She went back to 0 in like 3 weeks. And I was like, you know, itty bitty girl or something. And she came into my office one day, just came in and sat down. She said, you know, I don't really like being called itty bitty. I'm the smallest person in my family. And I mean, she was very, very clear about that was over the line. I said, baby, when you're a fat girl, you think itty bitty is a good thing. But everybody has what they have. And you want to have a relationship with students and staff so that if you are stepping over the line or on their toes or hurting their feelings, they can say that so you don't keep doing it. But the thing is to find your own kind of stride, what works for you, and not look at what works for other people. Because I have a couple teachers, if they said half the things I've said to girls, we'd have to close the school. Because they don't have that kind of relationship, or they're not like their grandmother, or, you know, so there are things that make you more or less relatable. And finding what that is so essential. I can't tell you. It is, because what one person can say will be viewed as disrespectful, and what somebody else says will be viewed as playing. And the worst thing you ever want to do is push a kid to the point of feeling disrespected. Then it's all bets off. And I can't really defend that. Usually when kids come to my office and they're, you know, talking about what the teacher said, and I will say to them, I said the same thing to you a week ago. But you know, Miss Andrews, it's not like that, you know, so it is, is tricky, and it requires some finesse, but it also, the only thing that I can really take credit for in this long career of the success that we've had is listening to kids say, this is what's happening, and figuring out ways to make it work better for them. Just listening. And if you do, you can find out what that is for you. But I'll see you after. Thank you so much. I think that's it. I don't have any more answers anyway. You can leave when the bell rings, but until then, please talk quietly to your neighbors. No, you can.